Hi everyone. So the topic for our curriculum was STD prevention among college students, and my name is Victoria.
My name is Paris.
My name is Erasmo.
And my name is Aldair. And my name is Giovanni Valencia. So today we're going to talk about the significance of STDs and college students. Now, as of 2021, the CDC estimated that youth ages between 15 and 24 are accounted for almost half of the new 26 million incident cases of STIs in the US. Now that's half. That's 50.5% of reported cases of STD. Now, more than 2.5 million cases of chlamydia, gonorrhea, and syphilis are reported as of 2021. Now, this is a public health concern, and that age range that we're studying, our curriculum is based on, shows an overwhelming increasing rate in comparison to other age groups. Now, adolescents and young adults are more likely to engage in high-risk sexual behaviors, such as having multiple sex partners, having sex without a condom. And down here on our slide, we have two infomercials by the CDC. Now, it's really significant because 1 out of 5 people in the US will have an STI. And again, almost half of those are responsible. They come from youth aged 15 to 24-year-olds. And one of the other things too on the infomercial to the right is that the health disparity causes an economic burden from all the new incidences. For example, 1.1 billion medical costs are attributed from these cases from chlamydia, gonorrhea, and syphilis. Now, the COVID-19 pandemic has also worsened this epidemic, and CDC preliminary data shows an increase of the incident rates. For example, on the chart here below, you can see there's a secular increasing trend of cases among this age group. Now, some of the social factors or the college culture that can be contributing factors to these rates is, for example, the hooking up culture, the dating culture, and the underdevelopment of the prefrontal cortex, where you have your executive functions where you make good judgments or not, or good behaviors. And there's also could be the underutilization of sexual health services for college students. And these factors increase the chances of exposure that directly reduce the chances of diagnosing and treating STIs. Now, also too, if we leave these STDs untreated, they can also cause chronic health complications that result in a lot of complications. For example, it causes damage to the economy of the nation. You can also have fissures in your relationships with the whole stigma about acquiring an STD and talking to your partners or significant others about STDs. And other things that cause chronic health complications, for instance, STDs can lead to cardiovascular system failure, nervous system failure, infertility, cervical cancer that leads to HPV, and it also increases the likelihood of acquiring HIV that then turns into AIDS. And again, we have here another infomercial to the left of the CDC showing that which age group, the race and the gender, and the percentage of chlamydia and gonorrhea and syphilis that these college students acquire, and especially in California, which is pretty significant here. So why our target population? Well, the rationale, the reason why we target college students is because half of these new cases are coming from 15 to 24-year-olds, which means that we have middle schoolers, high schoolers, and college students. So we're focusing on college students because this STD significantly affects adolescents out of the other age ranges. Now, the statistical data of documented cases of chlamydia and gonorrhea persists to be the highest among this age group, and young adult females mostly face chronic health complications, and undiagnosed STDs are estimated to cause infertility in more than 20,000 women yearly. Now, college students also engage again in high-risk sexual behaviors that result in serious health consequences. And then the high-risk sexual behaviors include, again, having multiple sex partners, practicing unprotected sex. And again, to reiterate, these are contributing factors. Again, the hooking up culture, the independency where you transition from high school to college, where now you're living a dorm. You're not being taken care of your parents, no one to guide you. The experimentation where you go out in the college party scene, trying, maybe drugs or alcohol use, and then the whole culture of the college atmosphere where you meet new people that come from different backgrounds, that socialization. And also, there could be other factors where there's an inability to access health, sexual health services, or some college students don't know, like, hey, I'm having symptoms. I don't know what it might be, and they can go undiagnosed. And that's really important because some STDs are treatable and some are asymptomatic. But if left untreated, they cause damaging health consequences, as I talked about earlier. So for the complete scope and sequence, our goal here for our curriculum is to equip college students with critical information regarding about STDs so they can make responsible decisions, practice safe sex, and so we can reduce the spread of STDs among this population. Our unit title is Sexually Transmitted Diseases, a Guide for College Students. And the objective of our curriculum is that we desire for our outcome that these college students will gain knowledge of STDs, how STDs affect their body, the prevention measures they can take, and the impacts on their community, that awareness. For example, we're going to be going over topic 1, STDs, how STDs affect the body, and we would like students to be able to differentiate between STDs. Also, topic 2, STD awareness. We want students to display a sense of awareness that surrounds STDs and that stigma behind it. Topic 3, we're going to be talking about STD resources, and we want students to demonstrate an awareness of different STD resources that there are in their community. Topic 4, prevention and treatment of STDs. We want students to demonstrate the proper preventative measures that they need to take for risky sexual behaviors. And topic 5, we're going to be talking about safe sex practices and contraceptives. And we want students to utilize safe sex practices. So I'm going to go ahead and give it up to my colleague here.
Hello. So for lesson plan 1, the STD's effects on the body. Sexually transmitted diseases and the effects on the body is a lesson plan using cognitive domain towards educating students on different sexually transmitted diseases and its symptoms that may be seen on the body when transmitted. The enabling objective. Students will gain knowledge on STD transmission and familiarize themselves with visual symptoms that will allow them to advocate for safe sex practices by making an informational flyer. Implementation. First, the instructor will begin the lesson by showing different STD symptoms of the human body. The pictures will include long-term infections with newly found exposures. After the lesson, the instructor will review all STDs and their symptoms. This will take about 10 minutes. Second, after reviewing STDs and their symptoms as a class, students will get into groups where students will use their knowledge of STDs to match STDs with symptoms. This will take about 5 minutes. Third, students will then trade activities and grade each other's work as the instructor reviews correct answers. This activity will take about 10 minutes. And fourth, the instructor will then assign 1 STD per group, where they will then create an informational flyer. This will take about 25 minutes. And for closure, once student flyers are complete, they will be posted around campus to advocate against STDs. To the right, you'll see a flyer and worksheet on syphilis, and the worksheet is filled with matching questions for STDs.
So lesson plan number 2 is about sexually transmitted disease awareness, and it is titled Spreading STD Awareness, Not STDs. And it's a lesson plan meant to shed light on some of the stigma associated with STDs and how this stigma can prevent many college students from seeking help. It targets the cognitive domain of Bloom's taxonomy, and for the enabling objective, we have describe how stigma regarding STDs can prevent college students from seeking care and support. So first, the instructor will start off with a brief introduction of the lesson. The instructor will ask something along the lines of, raise your hand if you have ever been diagnosed with an STD. And this is meant to exemplify how stigmatized it is to be open about one's STD status. So once the introduction is finished, we're going to move on to the implementation/procedures. So this will take about 45 minutes. So once the students arrive in the classroom, they will be asked to open their laptops and click a link to join a Google Jamboard. And if you're not familiar with Google Jamboard, there's an example of what it looks like on the right. It is a shared visual board where each student can anonymously write their response to a question in the form of a Post-it note. And the question they will be asked to respond to is, what are some ways STDs are stigmatized in our society? This Jamboard will also be projected onto the front of the classroom for everyone to see. Once they have completed their responses, they will be asked to share their thoughts, elaborate, and overall just discuss the topic further with the guidance of the instructor. Lastly, the instructor will present the PowerPoint titled STD Stigmatization in College Students and advise the students to take notes. So this will be the primary educational component of this lesson plan. At the end, there will be a closure, which will take about 5 minutes. The lesson will close off with a brief reflection and discussion. The students will be encouraged to raise their hands and share their thoughts or feelings on what they've learned concerning STD stigma and the unique challenges college students face in seeking help. As for the materials and equipment needed, we will need a laptop for the instructor, and then every student will be responsible for bringing their own personal laptops, internet access, a projector, a Google Jamboard, and a PowerPoint presentation.
All right, and then for lesson plan number 3, we're expanding on our scopes, and this one is about STD resources. So this lesson would be called finding out how resourceful my own city is, and it is a lesson plan that seeks to show students the resources that they have in their own city, and it also shows them that they have the ability to do their own research for their own help. When you're young, when you're going into college, you feel like you're taking on the world. I feel a lot of people seek independence, but also forget that they can learn to do things on their own. And one is to possibly seek help when it comes to STDs, possible STD exposure, or any thing having to do with STDs. The enabling objective for this is that the students will analyze 5 community resources for STD treatment and screening within Long Beach County or their own county, wherever this is being implemented. The lesson would take about 45 minutes, and the way it would work would be that students would view a PowerPoint presentation about STDs, as well as how to access STD resources in their own community. And the PowerPoint will come from an official state presentation on the topic. The PowerPoint that would be used comes from the state of Oklahoma's health department. The first few slides, because we don't have it here, the first few slides show different STDs. They describe the symptoms of a lot of common STDs that students could possibly be exposed to. And then it gives them guidance on certain practices, such as using condoms or other forms of contraception to avoid any STD exposure. And it then finally ends off the presentation by giving them a list of resources, websites, and other forms where they can seek any treatment, screening, counseling. So once that presentation is done, a handout will be given to the students, and they're going to be asked to search, list, and research 5 different STD resources in their community. Again, this can include any clinics, any testing sites, or any counseling related to any issues having to do with an STD. The handout will ask them to put the name, the address, the hours, and the services offered by each site. What this offers, again, is they'll have a basic handout that'll have the name of a clinic, the address, the hours, so that they know what time it's open and accessible, and the possible services that are offered by the site, again, such as maybe free testing or maybe testing at a low charge, maybe quick and rapid results, a clinic where they can go and pick up medicine or at least get a referral to a pharmacy nearby where they can then pick up some antibiotics or something to treat whatever infection they have, or any counseling related to a possible traumatic experience, or just dealing with the fact that, you know, an STD was caught and it's being treated and they just need to be able to talk about it. After the handout is filled out, the students will keep it with them. Again, it'll be a resource for them to have and to keep outside of the classroom in case they ever face any issues related to STD. They can think to themselves, oh, I have this paper and I know I need a test, so let me go find this site that I researched and found. For the closing part of the lesson, students will go around the room and each of them is going to say one of their sites or resources that they found out loud. And they're also going to list the address, the hours, and the services offered. This way, if one student happened to find one resource, such as maybe a testing site that another student couldn't find, it's expanding everyone else's research and allowing everyone to possibly find a location that they didn't find themselves. The materials that would be used for this lesson would be the projector where the PowerPoint presentation would be shown, the worksheet that is handed out to the students. They would then use their own personal laptops or computers to research the sites. They'll use websites such as Google or Apple Maps, which would give them the address of the locations as well as the hours. They have to access the various resource websites of the different clinics and sites, and then just a pencil and a pen to be able to write everything down. And this would, again, just allow them to know that they are able to do their own research for their own resources and that there are plenty of resources in the community if they end up needing them.
So for this lesson plan 4, we have the protect yourself or test yourself. It's a lesson plan and a guide to educate the college students about STD prevention and treatment. And this lesson encompasses mainly the cognitive domain, where they can have to think critically about where they're going to gather their research and their information to ultimately start a STD campaign. Now, the objective here is aimed at the class to be able to comprehend the importance, the significance of STD prevention by creating at least 6 prevention strategies that are aimed at reducing the STD rates on campus, on their own, or any other campus with an increased rates of STDs. Now, the instructor will first begin with an interactive Kahoot game to gauge the class's previous knowledge about prevention and treatment strategies. And we will conclude with a reiteration and reinforcement of the practical STD prevention methods that were used previously in other researches that they've learned previously in their other courses. And afterward, the students will be divided into separate groups of 4 and will be instructed to collaboratively construct an online STD PowerPoint campaign that emphasizes the 6 prevention strategies. The required materials that they will need, well, what's included is a projector to display the PowerPoint on the screen as well, and laptops for the students, and textbooks for their research if they, some people prefer the class textbook, or they use their laptops to look up their research, primary, secondary data, anything that is above 2000, that's not older than 5 years, and their cell phones for the Kahoot interactive game in the beginning of the class. After the students are done finding their research and constructing their STD campaign, they must present their STD campaign to the class. And overall, the time allocated for the intro should be approximately 10 minutes. The construction of the STD campaign should take at least 45 minutes. The presentation should take 20 minutes for 5 minutes for each of the 4 groups. And we will end with a recap of 5 minutes that equals to a total of an hour and 20 minutes of classroom time. But again, the objective here is for the class to comprehend the importance of STD preventions by using their own strategies aimed at reducing STD rates.
All right, so this is our last lesson plan. It's the Safe Sex Practices and Contraceptives lesson plan. The Safe Sex Leads to Healthy Lives lesson plan, it uses a cognitive domain to encourage college students to utilize safe sex practices. And basically, the overall objective of this lesson plan is that the students will actually be able to utilize the safe sex practices after they've reviewed why they're important and learned more about them. So for our enabling objective for this one, it's for the students to create a zine on safe sex practices, which would outline a minimum of at least 3 types of sexually transmitted diseases and 3 strategies that would be considered to lessen the risk of contracting a STD. And so to introduce this lesson plan, the instructor would start by asking for a volunteer to show the class how to properly put on a condom using a banana and a condom as a visual representation for the class. And so the students would be asked to critique this example by explaining what was done either correctly or incorrectly before beginning the lesson. So as for implementation, the instructor would begin the lesson by passing out 1 index card to each of the students and giving the students 3 minutes to write down as many STD and preventative strategies they can think of based on their knowledge from what they've learned in all of the previous lessons. And the instructor would then collect the index cards from the class and collectively review it with them. And then following this review, the instructor would explain the requirements for creating a zine. And this would be where they would have to include those 3 different STDs and the 3 different preventative strategies that they learned about. And then on a separate page, I have the materials that they would need. So for the zine and the introduction to this lesson plan, some materials that would be needed would include the condom, the banana, the index cards, pens, markers, and colored pencils for the zine, paper for the zine as well, scissors, maybe some stickers or magazines and glue sticks. And then finally, a peer evaluation form, which would be used to conclude this lesson plan. So for the closure of it, once the students would have completed their zines, they would trade their zine with another group and they would complete this peer evaluation form. And finally, there would be a brief discussion on the importance of utilizing safe sex practices, and that would conclude this lesson plan.
By conclusion, by creating lesson plans tailored to college students, society can reduce the amount of transmission within their communities. With the rate of sexually transmitted disease increasing, it is necessary to increase awareness, provide resources, and take preventative measures to reduce the impact of STDs on college students. Sexually transmitted diseases are a dire public health problem and disproportionately impact the college population. With the proper knowledge and resources, students can make the right choice by protecting themselves against STDs. And that concludes our presentation. For our last slide, we have our references. Yeah.